Welcome back, everyone. So, if you're an advanced user or a software architect tuning into this explainer, you already know the deal. Scaling AI in your actual day-to-day workflow? Yeah, it takes way more than just typing out a quick, clever prompt. Today, we're getting our hands dirty. We're going to unpack the exact architectural blueprint for building robust, multi-step automations using Windsurf's Cascade skills.
Let's just quickly glance at our roadmap. We'll start by looking beyond the basic prompt, break down the actual anatomy of a skill, talk about managing scopes for teams, hit some real-world use cases, compare skills, rules, and workflows, and then finally wrap up with some essential best practices. Okay, let's jump right in.
Kicking things off, moving beyond the basic prompt.
There's a quote straight from the documentation that absolutely hits the nail on the head. The hardest engineering tasks often take more than just good prompts. It's so true, right? Real-world engineering requires serious heavy lifting. You literally can't just ask an AI, hey, deploy this to staging, or go run a security audit with a single sentence and expect flawless execution. No way. You need reference scripts, you need standardized templates, comprehensive checklists, the whole shebang. And that right there is exactly where Cascade skills enter the chat. They let you bundle all of those supporting files into one cohesive folder that the AI can just grab whenever it needs it.
But here's the really brilliant part, and it's something called progressive disclosure. Honestly, this is the secret sauce. Think about it. If you have dozens of heavy scripts and templates, loading them all at once would completely overload your AI's memory window. Instead, Cascade uses progressive disclosure. By default, it only looks at a skill's name and a super brief description. It only pulls the actual heavy file content into its context window upon invocation, meaning when it actively decides, I actually need this right now. It protects your lean context window from getting totally overwhelmed, but keeps an entire arsenal of tools right at the AI's fingertips.
All right, let's actually look under the hood at the anatomy of a skill.
Now sure, you could just use the Windsurf UI to set these up, but as architects, you really need to know the manual folder structure so Cascade knows exactly where to look. It's a simple three-step process. First, you create a directory. If it's just for a specific project, it goes in the .windsurf/skills folder, followed by whatever custom name you want. Second, inside that folder, you drop a skill.md file. And third, you absolutely have to include YAML front matter at the very top of that file. Boom! That folder is now the dedicated container for all your scripts and templates.
Okay, so what actually goes into that YAML front matter? There are two absolute non-negotiables, the name and the description. The name is just a unique identifier, lowercase letters, numbers, hyphens, you know the drill. Something like setup-dev environment. You'll use this if you want to manually trigger the skill by mentioning it. But the description? That is where the magic actually happens. That brief explanation is literally what Cascade reads to make its auto-invocation decisions. It's the trigger. It tells the model exactly when it needs to pull your supporting files into the context window automatically.
Moving right along to managing scopes for teams.
If you're an engineering manager trying to scale these automations across a team, consider this table your ultimate playbook. It perfectly illustrates how you can manage different levels of automation. Say you want a skill tied to a specific project. You'd use the workspace scope. That lives right in the repository, gets committed with your code, so anybody who clones the repo automatically gets the skill. Pretty neat, right? Now, if you have a personal productivity hack you want everywhere, use the global scope in your local user directory. And then, for the big leagues, there's the system scope. IT can deploy these OS-specific read-only skills across an entire enterprise fleet. Just imagine being able to instantly roll out a mandatory security checklist to 500 developers at once. That's the sheer power of system-level scope.
Let's ground this theory a bit and look at some real-world use cases.
A perfect heavy-duty example is a deployment workflow. Take a look at the components you can bundle together here. You're not just crossing your fingers and telling the AI to deploy. You are handing it the actual deployment execution scripts, the highly specific environment configuration files, and, absolutely crucial, the rollback procedures and safety checks. By bundling that entire deployment workflow into one single skill folder, Cascade gets instant access to everything it needs to pull off a complex, safe deployment right when things get critical.
Another fantastic scenario is code review guidelines. You can empower the AI to conduct ridiculously thorough reviews by bundling up your organization's specific style guides, your exhaustive security audit checklists, and your standardized review templates. So instead of the AI basically just guessing what a good code review looks like for your specific company, it's explicitly following the exact standards you've placed right there in the skill folder. It's a massive win for consistency.
Okay, here we go. The climax of this explainer. Correctly choosing your automation method. Skills versus rules versus workflows.
Let's look at a really concrete comparison. Imagine you have that complex code review process we just talked about and compare it to a simple behavioral constraint. Look, if you just have a short, straightforward style constraint, like say, enforcing tabs over spaces, finally ending that holy war once and for all, you do not need a whole folder full of files, you just need a simple rule. But if you're dealing with an army of templates, security docs, and style guides for a comprehensive code review, a skill is absolutely mandatory.
This master table right here is essentially your ultimate decision matrix. Let's break it down real quick. In terms of purpose, skills are for those multi-step procedures that require external files. Rules, those are your behavioral guidelines. And workflows are simply prompt templates for repeatable tasks. Structurally, skills are the only ones that use a full folder with supporting resources. Rules and workflows are just single markdown files. But invocation is where skills really flex. The model automatically decides to use them based on that progressive disclosure we talked about, though you can still @mention them manually. Rules can be automatic depending on their mode, but workflows are strictly manual. You have to trigger them via a / command.
So, if you take only one thing away from the source material today, make it this golden rule for protecting your context window. Whenever you're deciding what to build, ask yourself 2 questions. First, should Cascade pick this up automatically based on my prompt? And second, does it actually need supporting files to get the job done? If the answer to both of those is a resounding yes, you build a skill. If it's just a quick behavioral constraint, stick to a rule. And if you always want to manually trigger a prompt template, use a workflow. It's really that simple.
All right, let's bring it home with some best practices for mastery.
If you are going to manage a large-scale global skill repository, you've got to keep things clean. First up, your descriptions in that YAML file must be crystal clear. I can't stress this enough. Cascade relies entirely on that text to decide if the skill is relevant. Second, don't leave the AI hanging. Make sure to actually include all the necessary checklists and templates right there in the folder. And finally, naming. Please use highly descriptive names like deploy to staging. Avoid lazy names like deploy1 or final deploy v2. Not only is it just bad practice, but it actively confuses the AI and completely ruins its ability to understand your actual intent.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to reflect on your own day-to-day processes. Which of your incredibly complex multi-step automations is currently just sitting there cluttering up your context window? What's that one checklist you find yourself copy-pasting over and over and over again? I challenge you to pick just one of those tasks today and transform it into a progressively disclosed, elegantly architected skill. Are you going to keep brute forcing your workflows, or are you ready to actually architect your automation? Thanks for focusing in with me today, and I'll catch you next time.